Yes, fellas, yes, we are back. Welcome back to the Pits and Riffs podcast. What's up, guys? Welcome back. It's been about 3 weeks since the last upload of this series. It's been about 4 weeks since I recorded one of these because I went to Boston 3 weeks ago, so I wanted to make sure that I recorded one in advance of me going to Boston. In that time, a lot of things have happened, a lot of cool things, some concerts. So today, I'm going to talk about those concerts. That's going to be kind of part of the new riff segment of the show. I'm going to break down some country metal for you in anticipation of a country that is, of a concert that is coming to near where I am on Friday, and then talking about some upcoming tours and stuff a little bit later in the show. So let's get into it. Let's talk about some of these concerts that I've been talking about. So if you want to see the full reviews of the concerts, link is up here. I post album reviews, concert reviews, anything like that. So if you want to check out my full-length reviews of the concerts that I'm going to be talking about, right up here. So first, let's start with the Ghost concert because that was the first concert that I attended out of the two. So I attended concerts on back-to-back days. The first one was a Ghost concert that was in Philadelphia on July 19th. The second one was a Shinedown concert with Morgan, Wade, and Bush. That was the following day, Sunday, July 20th. And those were both great concerts. So let's talk about them. That one was at Madison Square Garden in New York. Shinedown did not come to Philadelphia this tour. They hadn't I don't think they've come to Philadelphia in a while because the last time they came around they went to Prudential. Well, no, the last time they came around they went to Atlantic City. The time before that they were at Prudential Center. They might have gone to Prudential Center twice. I don't know. Um, but I don't think I've never seen them in Philly yet. I've been to 3 concerts for Shinedown. I haven't seen them in Philly, so maybe one day. Hopefully one day. I won't have to, drive or take a train for over an hour to see them. But anyways, let's get into it. The Ghost concert. What I really liked about the Ghost concert was that they played kind of a mix of their newer and older music. It wasn't, it was honestly like a little less of the new album than I expected, which is a good thing because I've obviously been pretty critical of the new album. But generally speaking, like I was happy with it. I think the fans of the newer music would have been happy with it as well. They did play 4 songs off the new album, but it was a set list of 22, so kind of small in comparison. The show itself was it felt like 2 hours total. Um, Started at about 8:10. The setlist.fm site says 8:05. I was there. It started at 8:10, so I was a little upset about that. I had a watch on, but I know a lot of people didn't. The phone-free experience was good and bad. It was good because I wasn't watching the concert through somebody's phone the whole time, which is fantastic, and I think that outweighs any of the negatives. The negatives were, sitting there for an hour trying to think of stuff to do, having gone to that concert alone, and basically just thinking about how cool Flyer season tickets are going to be for my second, well, technically third season as a season ticket member. But that's beside the point. That's basically how I spent my time hanging out there. I don't know if so at Wells Fargo Center, in case you ever are going to go to a concert there, there is a milkshake stand behind section 219. You can get a $20 milkshake, and this sounds crazy, but it's probably worth $20. It's a lot that you get with it, and it's really good. But I did not venture up there. I was trying to not die that night. Save that for another night, I guess. I didn't want to, have digestive issues while taking a train to the Shinedown concert the following day. So it's almost like, you don't want to get drunk and then go to, have plans the next day. I don't drink, but that's sugar's kind of my equivalent. Um, but with the phone-free experience, besides that, some people didn't have watches, didn't really know the time. I wonder if because I don't have like an Apple Watch or Samsung Watch or anything like that, so I wonder if they asked people to take their watches off too. Um, I don't think they would have. I don't know if you can record on those, but that might have been a good sort of contraption to have there. Um, I don't know. maybe that's your excuse. Maybe Ghost is in line or is collaborating with Apple and Samsung to try to get people to buy more watches so that that way they can have access to their phones during concerts. I don't know. I don't know. Just conspiracy. But generally speaking, phone free experience was a great thing. I thought. Again, not watching it through somebody's phone, felt like people were actually like listening to the music. Nobody, I mean, apparently somebody recorded, a couple of songs. I don't know how, like, especially they were pretty close. I never understood, like, the second concert I'm going to talk about, the Shinedown concert. Like, somebody filmed the whole concert. I just don't understand that. You're not getting anything out of it. Like, what do you want it? Like, if you post it on YouTube, you're probably not going to get copyright striked, but you're not going to be able to monetize it, so you're not making any money off of it. So what are you doing it for? Viewership? Like when I upload stuff for views, it's always something that like it's just like something I don't anticipate making money off of. This is also a channel where I don't like plan to ever make money off of this channel. So, um, but I just don't understand it. I don't understand like what you get out of filming and uploading like full songs. I used to do it when I was a teenager, but not anymore. Like I like to film little bits and pieces of the songs I like for vlog material. Just to kind of remember the concert. But filming a whole song or like a whole concert even, like it just seems like a waste of time and money to me, especially the whole concert, because what are you there for? So yeah, the phone-free experience I think is a good thing. I think more artists should do it, and if I see it in the future, I'm probably gonna go out and get a Samsung watch. Not that I can't live without my phone, but when there's like maybe I should have just brought a book or something with me instead. Um, it's just kind of boring pre-show. Like nothing's really going on. So especially there weren't any opening acts, which was also, positive and negative, and I'll talk about that with the Shinedown concert too. But just going through the set list, they start off basically Ghost has this thing. They start off every concert. With the first two songs off the most recent album, it's been that way since the prequel tour. Um, so they start off with Peacefield and Lacrima. I still don't know how to pronounce it. Um, which you know, I like those songs. I thought they were better live than I did actually off of the studio album. I thought every song they played off Skeleton was better live than on the studio album. So maybe that's just me, but um, and I also think Ghost just generally sounds better live than they do in studio, which is really hard because there aren't a lot of bands besides maybe Rush and like Devin Townsend who I can think of that play better live than they do in studio, or like it sounds better live. But Ghosts seem to be one of those bands. They go from there to Spirit off Meliora. They played 6 songs off Meliora in this concert, which did not surprise me at all, because it is the 10th anniversary of the release of that album. I don't have an exact date, but now I need to look that up. But that album was released in 2015, August 21st, so almost 10 years. But it is basically the 10th anniversary this year of that album. So kind of anticipated they were going to play a lot from it tonight or that night. Now they go to Infestissimum. They play Per Aspera ad Inferi. Love that song. Love every song off Infestissimum. They played 3 off that album. That's also one that they hadn't really played a lot of previously. Like the last time they had played that song live before this tour was 2019. They go from that right back to Meliora, from the pinnacle to the pit. Then what always interests me is how much like bands will play stuff from not their most recent album, but the one before that. So for this concert, like I was wondering how much they would play from Impera, because a lot of bands, like at least growing up, a lot of the bands that I liked would shrink the number of songs they played from their second most recent album to very little. Like Dream Theater kind of does that all the time. I mean, the first Dream Theater concert I saw was about a year after the release of The Astonishing, and they played maybe one song from the self-titled album. Then a couple tours later, when they were touring with A View from the Top of the World, they didn't play like anything from Distance Over Time. And then, kind of the same sort of thing with different artists that I've listened to over time. But Ghost played a fair amount from Impera. They played a couple of songs, starting with "Call Me Little Sunshine." It's also a set list of 22, so they had a lot of content to really work with. They go from that to another kind of recent song that doesn't necessarily have an album. "The Future is a Foreign Land," which I always thought was going to be in a song off Skeletor, at least like as a bonus track or something. Um, but yeah, so they go from that to "Future is a Foreign Land," "Devil Church" kind of as an interlude, before they go into "Siracy." And again, a couple of Meliora songs. Then they go back to Impera, "Darkness at the Heart of My Love," which is a song I don't think they played their first tour, at least not that I ever heard it. No, they did not play that song their first tour. Um, then they go from that into another song off of Skeletor called "Satanized." Another pretty. I didn't really like the song off the album, but I enjoyed it more as it was played live. Then they played Prime Mover, so this was a little bit of a shock, because for the most part they had been playing another song off of um, the inaugural album, Opus Eponymous, throughout their tour. Um, but they go back to Prime Mover here, which is a song they have typically played on tour in the past. For the most part, in that spot, hold on, I'm trying to look for it. They started playing Prime Mover afterwards, basically, because then they go from there to Boston and they start playing it up there. But before that was Satan Prayer. So maybe that wasn't doing well on tour. They had played that song last in 2020, once, um, basically on their most, that 2019 to 20 tour that they were on, kind of still advertising prequel. But they wind up going to Prime Mover here. Then they go from that to the last Skeleton song of the night, Umbra. Um, from that to the songs that you knew they were going to play, Year Zero off of Infestissimum, He Is, Rats, Kiss the Go-Goat. And then there was a little bit of an interlude before and after that song. And then they go to the heavy metal song, Mummy Dust. And then they finish up the set with Monstrous Clock, which they haven't played that much recently. That was kind of like their de facto end song up until 2019. And then it kind of moved to a little bit like whatever their most recent song off their most recent album was. So after Prequel, it was Life Eternal. After Impera, it was kind of a mix, but a lot of the time it was Respite on the Spital Field's not the first time they went through Impera because the album hadn't been released yet. And then they do the encore, a little bit of a funny interlude there where, Tobias, Papa Emeritus, gets on stage and is like, I'm not even going to try to pretend like this isn't like sort of the same thing Devin Townsend did when I saw him live. It was like, yeah, there's going to be an encore. And then it's the three songs that everybody kind of expected: Mary on a Cross, Dance Macabre, and Square Hammer. I was a little bit surprised they didn't play Ritual, but I don't know, maybe they're just kind of moving away from the inaugural album stuff. But it was a great concert nonetheless. Um, so let's talk about Shinedown, the Shinedown concert the next night. Now, I was a little bit more critical of Shinedown's set, not because of the set or the songs that they played, but just because of like there were these long interludes between songs, and I really didn't like that. Like it almost seemed like the gap between songs sometimes was about as long as the songs themselves. And so they played 18 songs, and I thought they could have played a lot more. Um, and I, as a fan, would have loved to have heard a lot more, especially like, from the last couple of albums. They played a couple of songs off of Planet Zero. They played only a couple songs off of Threat to Survival. I thought it would have been cool to have heard more from that. Ghost played 6 songs off their album that's celebrating its 10-year anniversary, Threat to Survival, which was a big Shinedown album. I thought they would play more off of that, but they only played the 2 songs. Although previously in the tour, they had played a lot more. But they, before that, Morgan Wade and Bush opened for them. Morgan Wade is more country, so it wasn't really my kind of brand. Bush, I thought, went really well with Shinedown. It was sort of this hard rock, borderline heavy metal type music. Um, and then they get into their set and they start with the song again. It was pretty predictable. Dance Kid Dance. They go from that immediately all the way back to Leave a Whisper with Fly from the Inside. And then from there to Cut the Cord off of Threat to Survival. And then How Did You Love? That kind of gave me the impression that, songs 3 and 4 are Threat to Survival. You're going to hear a lot more of that over the course of the set. But those were actually the only 2 Threat to Survival songs of the night. Then they go to Devil off Attention Attention. Love that song. 365, another one of the singles off of Dance Kid Dance, whatever the album is going to be called. Which kind of reminds me of like when Rush in the Time Machine tour were already playing songs from Clockwork Angels. They had Caravan and BU2B that they were playing. This kind of reminds me of the same thing. And then obviously we're probably going to hear a lot more once the new album comes out. That's probably going to be the next Shinedown tour, which I would anticipate sometime maybe starting next spring or summer. Um, they go from there to Enemies off Amaryllis, which they only played that song off Amaryllis that night. I would have liked to have heard a lot more from that album again, but I don't know. It would have been cool to have heard like maybe one more song at the very least off of Amaryllis. Like I don't think I've ever heard Bully live, and I love that song. Unity I heard last time, but that would have been another cool one. They go to the B stage. That's where I thought you might even hear the title track of that album. Um, they kind of do this, a couple of sort of laid back acoustic type songs, lighter songs where they go from If You Only Knew off of the Sound for Madness, which they played 5 songs off the Sound of Madness, including Diamond Eyes, which was kind of a single, but they included as a bonus track off that album. And then they go to Get Up, and then Call Me, and In Memory, which was their first time playing that since 2019, and it was the first time, obviously, they played it on that tour. Another song off of Leave a Whisper. So they really went far back for this one, and apparently Brent made the set list for that night. Um, After that, they kind of get back to the heavier stuff a little bit, and then they kind of do this sort of like back and forth between heavy and lighter and heavy and lighter. So they go Fist First, Diamond Eyes, and then they go into a Symptom of Being Human, Slow It Down, Planet Zero, Up Here, Borderline Heavy Metal, Simple Man by Skinnerd, which they basically play every tour. And then they come back with Monsters, again, another really heavy one, Sound of Madness, Up Here in terms of heaviness, and then they finish it up with Second Chance, which I thought doing the 2 Sound of Madness songs back to back to end it is fantastic. I love when bands play 2 songs back to back that are back to back on the same album like that. Um, so yeah, that was all pretty cool. It was a great concert. Again, just would have preferred, not as many interludes between songs because I thought they could have snuck in a couple more songs in there at the very least. And then, like Planet Zero, I thought they played a decent amount from. Sound of Madness, obviously, they played a decent amount from. Attention, Attention, they played 3 songs from. I thought that was appropriate. But I would have liked to have heard one more song from Amaryllis. Don't even really care what it was. And then maybe another couple songs from Threat to Survival, given that it's the album's 10-year anniversary. But yeah, that was a Shinedown concert. Some advice if you're ever going to concerts on back-to-back nights, always bring earplugs. I did. I brought earplugs. I even brought a backup pair both nights, just in case, because you don't want to have tinnitus. So that's just my advice. But now let's get into the breakdown. So today I am breaking down an album by Volbeat and anticipate of a Volbeat country concert. I keep on saying country. It's the name of this episode is Outlaw and Country Western Metal. Outlaws and Country Western Metal. A Volbeat concert. That is what I am attending on Friday. So today we are talking about Outlaw Gentlemen and Shady Ladies by Volbeat. So a little bit of a backstory. This is the first album with Rob Caggiano, don't know, on guitar. Um, To this point, Volbeat had kind of progressively been moving more to the mainstream. Their first, their most recent album before that, Beyond Hell Above Heaven, had a couple of songs, Fallen and what was the other name of the other one? Heaven Nor Hell. Those were kind of lighter songs that were sort of intended for the mainstream. They also had heavier songs off that album, like A Warrior's Call and The Mirror and the Ripper, which were pretty, famous um, as heavier songs, at least famous in terms of their fan base. Um, but they'd kind of been moving, like they had had some rockabilly, Johnny Cash, Elvis Presley type songs in the past. Sad Man's Tongue, obviously, still counting a little bit. Um, but this was kind of a whole album of it. So today, I'm going to give you some backstories on these songs, which is kind of what the breakdown is intended to be. Backstories, really, kind of explaining the albums as they are. What is each song about, and what have the artists said about each song? So let's start with the first one. Let's Shake Some Dust. This kind of sets the tone. I really like the two albums that Volbeat has that start with that kind of short intro. The other one being Guitar Gangsters and Cadillac Blood. I can't say guitar when I'm saying the title of that album or song. Um, Human Instrument kind of has something like that, but it is also sort of part of the song. Like it has a little sort of country western intro to the first song off that album, Human Instrument. Um, I like that a lot. I think that kind of, sets the tone, gets you a little amped up. They go from that to Pearl Heart, which is a little bit of a shaky transition, but Pearl Heart is a good song in itself. I think the start of that song, like the first, couple seconds, are the weakest part of that song and probably the weakest part of that album, and then everything after that is amazing. So, what is this song about? Pearl Heart was somebody who cooked at a boarding house. Her finances were pretty bleak at the time that she committed her crimes and pursued that life. She had a mother who was seriously ill. She got a letter from her mother asking her to return home, hence the lyrics in the song, a letter from her mother now dying in her bed. Her and a guy who went by the alias of Joe Boot robbed a stagecoach in 1899. A stagecoach was stopped and robbed were three passengers. The lyrics from the song. They took $431.20, which today would be worth around $16,000, 427 and 94 cents. They both went to jail, but they were acquitted by the jury, who I guess felt bad for her because of her situation and her finances. The judge didn't necessarily like that. But then they immediately went back to jail for tampering with U.S. mail. Boot escaped. He had a sentence of 4 years, and he escaped after, or no, he had a sentence of 30 years and escaped after two. Pearl Hart was pardoned by the governor of Arizona in 1902. The story kind of ends there. There really wasn't any crime after that. So, both an outlaw gentleman in Joe Boot and a shady lady in Pearl Heart kind of sets the tone for the entire rest of the album as well. And Volbeat just at this part, they just go straight into the country western theme. This album is sort of a loose concept album based around the title, and this is sort of the song that shows that. You've got the Outlaw Gentleman, you've got the Shady Lady, and it's not the first time that you would um, see that in this album. So then you go from the Nameless one, which is one of my favorite songs off the album. So what Michael Poulsen said about the song, because I think it's good to talk about what the artist said instead of trying to explain it myself when there is a detailed explanation. So Michael Poulsen said, "This is a fictitious song about a young couple who are flirting with spiritual cards and Ouija boards to get in contact with spirits or demons or something from another dimension. Somehow they make contact with some ghouls through some tombstones from the 18th century, and they end up selling their souls to the Nameless One. Suddenly they wake up in the 1800s inside a casket, and an outlaw ghoul is crashing their casket with his cane. He pulls a couple up and says, 'You're on your way to the Nameless One. You have a deal,' and he takes them along with his riders. On the next album, you'll find out who the Nameless One is. The next album, we do find out who the Nameless One is because the sequel, I don't think this has really been identified, but the sequel to this song is The Lowest Crossroad, the final track off of Seal the Deal and Let's Boogie. The Loa is the Nameless One. Um, but the lyrics at the very outset of that song tell you that it's the same sort of thing. Michael Poulsen says about the Nameless One, they wake up in the 1800s inside a casket, and an outlaw ghoul is crashing their casket with his cane. The first three lines of The Lowest Crossroad are breathing, breathing the air from the dead, the stench of the soil, the sound of him walking his cane. So you got the mention of the cane, you got the mention of the dead, the casket, being in the soil, being around the dead. So it's obvious that this is a sequel to the song. Aloha is basically a Haitian voodoo. One of the ghouls they make contact with is also revealed in the song. It's Mary Laveau. It's technically She was technically 19th century, not 18th century, but she's referenced several times throughout the song. And it doesn't look to me like there is a third part to this series. I tried looking to see if there was something hidden in the follow-up album, Rewind, Replay, Rebound, but anything would be a stretch. The songs that I thought would be the most likely would be The Everlasting, but that wasn't. And then Sorry Sack of Bones, but again, not really. Other topics thematically, those songs are really about. In this song, the bridge and the instrumental that precedes it are just full on country western combined with metal, and that is one of, I think, the greatest riffs. In my opinion, that is one of my favorite riffs off any album ever. Um, Deadboat Rising. So again, I'll talk about what Michael Poulsen said about this song. It's mainly a song about reaching out for the spirit of his father. The first time I was driving a car in the U.S., I was going from Mississippi to Memphis. How country of you! And the GPS system went blank. I could have followed the signs, but this was the first time I was driving a car in the U.S., so I looked up into the air and saw an eagle. I followed that eagle for quite some time, and my father was really into eagles, so I said, I'm just going to follow that eagle and see where it takes me. It took off in a few minutes, and when it took off, I was in Mississippi, so I think maybe my father was trying to tell me something. Um, that's what I like to believe. So Deadbutt Rising is about trying to reach out to that eagle and bring it back to where I am now so I can meet it. So very kind of emotional song for Michael Poulsen. This is also, he does write a lot of songs about his father, and this isn't the last one from the album. Fallen was another great song he wrote about his father. Even as recently as the new album, Lonely Fields, is the same thing. So pretty cool and pretty, anybody who's ever had a father and lost a father can definitely relate to that, I would assume. Um, it's also just a freaking awesome song musically. Definitely, one of Volbeat's heaviest in the Caggiano era, which I know a lot of people complained about, how light the albums kind of got up until Servant to the Mind and then the most recent album. Um, then it goes from that to Cape of Our Hero. This one seems to kind of have two meanings. So Poulsen says that it's about the process of growing into who you want to be, essentially. But the music video tells a story of a kid whose dad goes off to war and doesn't come back, which is, happy but also a little sad. He still dreams of trying to be a hero the way that his dad was, while also, desperately wishing the angels would carry him to his dad. It goes from that, this is sort of a little bit of a laid back type of song before we go straight into like doom heavy metal. Starting with Room 24, which features King Diamond. What a collaboration that is. This song is about sleep paralysis. So sleep paralysis is basically the result of kind of not sleeping enough or having interruptions in your sleep. So it's waking up, being sort of frozen stiff, unable to breathe or move when you're falling asleep or waking up. Thematically, it sounds a lot like a Dream Theater song. So you wonder where was this at on Parasomnia? Stuff about sleep paralysis. They did make a False Awakening suite, which was about sleep paralysis about 11 years ago now. But this is kind of that sort of doom type metal, which I thought was fantastic, and sort of very on brand thematically for Volbeat. Then it goes to the Hangman's Body Count, which is another doom heavy metal song. Um, Poulsen said this is a lot of people have heard those ghost stories about the hangman from the Old West, and I wanted to do my own. The blind hangman with a raven on his shoulders and eyes is out there, walking through the valley, judging who is good and who is bad. You'd never know he was there. You could only hear his boots. He picks out the sinners, and they're told while they're in bed that the raven will come and knock on the door, and they should follow the raven to the hangman. The second verse of the song tells a story of someone who gets one of those knocks at the door and goes to see the hangman, but they've lived a life of robbery, so they're an outlaw gentleman. And so you have the lyrics. You smell the rain, and as you walk the final dirt, pictures of the crime are past but not forgotten in this world. Talking about the life of the robbery. See the valley turn to darkness on your way. The only friend you have is standing at the gallows end. Basically, the hangman is going to kill him. And then the hangman does kill him. Put on the rope. You knew the day was coming. Say your prayers once more. You're part of the hangman's body count. This is, again, a very doomish sounding song, but Poulsen kind of imitates Elvis Presley's singing style a little bit throughout the song. So it's this sort of unique blend, again, of this country western slash country meets heavy metal meets doom. So just a fantastic song. Um, and Volbeat is known for doing these sorts of collaboration, not collaboration, but sort of taking country and country western and adding metal to it, which is they're really the only band like that that does stuff like that. Then you go to My Body, which is again a little bit of a reprieve, kind of like Cape of Our Hero, where it's this sort of lighter song, and it's sort of this very inspirational one at that. Whereas Cape of Our Hero is sort of the sadder song. My Body is a straight positive song. It's a cover from Young the Giant that Poulsen heard while in a taxi on Volbeat's U.S. tour. Um, and then you go from that to Lola Montez, which is the hit, which had a positive and negative effect on Volbeat's discography, the next two albums after that. Um, Positive in case you like the hard rock stuff, negative in case you don't like the hard rock stuff and enjoy the older, heavier Volbeat. Um, but this was about the shady lady known around the world after the song. So let's talk about who Lola Montez was. She was basically a provocative dancer whose misfortune with romance followed her everywhere. There were so many instances of her life going wrong and her bringing it upon herself. Um, so kind of starts with after a fight with her boyfriend, whose name was Alexander Dujarier. He shows up to a dinner party, offends somebody, and that somebody kills him. Um, After that, she becomes involved with the King of Bavaria. She had a great influence on him, and that was really unpopular with the people of Bavaria. So when the king abdicated for his son, Lola and the king fled. Um, the King Ludwig, said that he'd meet her in Switzerland, but he never did. So from there, she went to the UK. She married an army cornet, but had to flee with him because of the terms of her first divorce. Didn't allow her to remarry while the husband or ex-husband was still alive, and he was. Then she got divorced from the army cornet. The marriage failed, basically. Who and the army cornet later got tuberculosis and died after almost drowning and dying a few years prior. From there, she moved to San Francisco, started her dancing career again, married a local newspaperman. That marriage failed and ended in divorce. She moved to Australia, which is where you get a lot of the lyrics from this song, performing her spider dance. She performed it in September 1854, but let's just say she was dressed inappropriately for the audience. The local newspaper said the performance was utterly subversive to all ideas of public morality. Lyric from the song. Um, After several further bad reviews by the Ballarat Times, she attacked the editor, Henry Seacamp. Henry, taste my whip, with a whip. She moved back to the U.S. from there. She kind of failed to revitalize her dancing career. She kind of lived quietly alone in Philadelphia. Um, quietly, this kind of reference later in the song. No words would later come. Did the spider bite your tongue? Those are lyrics from the song. And so she died from syphilis. Who would have thought at the age of 39? What a life. Not a good one. This is also, again, a very melodic song, much more hard rock as opposed to heavy metal. Um, Probably, it was one of their lighter songs in their catalog, which, through its popularity, was probably the reason that the following two albums continued to trend away from heavy metal and more towards that sort of hard mainstream rock. And you go from Lola Montez into Black Bart, another outlaw gentleman whose real name was Charles Bowles. So, who was Charles Bowles? He was born in England. He joined the California Gold Rush in 1849 with his brothers, who both died in New York a few years later. He joined the Union Army for the Civil War. He was injured at the Battle of Vicksburg, but in the process of being in the Army, he worked his way up to first lieutenant, and then he was discharged in June 1865. After the war, he went back to searching for gold in Idaho and Montana. Wasn't necessarily really successful with that. Um, Apparently, he wrote to his wife that he had an unpleasant encounter with some Wells Fargo and Company agents, and he was going to get revenge, and he did at least 28 times. Funny enough, he is known as a sort of poet robber, but only left two poems in his 28 plus robberies, which were the fourth and fifth robbery. So he started the fourth and he stopped after the fifth, and then he committed at least 23 other robberies after that and did not leave any poems. But he is known as the robber who left poems. One of the poems was, "I've labored long and hard for the bread, for honor and for riches, but on my corns too long you've tread, you fine-haired sons of bitches." So it's basically the refrain from the song with the first and second lines reversed to make it, rhyme kind of better a little bit. Um, at his last robbery, he gets shot in the hand and barely escapes, but in the process, he leaves behind several items, including a handkerchief and food, so he's kind of easily found and arrested. But he was very polite with the police, which you might not expect from an outlaw who committed 28 robberies. So Wells Fargo, only out of the 28 robberies, only pressed charges against him for the last one. He was sentenced to 6 years in prison, but got out in 4 on good behavior. Again, not necessarily something you would hear about from an outlaw. Um, he was last seen after his release. Then his whereabouts became unknown. He checked into a hotel in Virginia, and that was kind of the last time anybody saw him. Some people say he moved to Japan. Some say he died and was buried in an unmarked grave. Nobody really knows for sure. And then you go to Lonesome Rider, which is just straight up country western. You can probably imagine listening to this from the Red Rocks in Nevada or Sedona, and the music video matches it perfectly. Sarah Blackwood sings the female parts in the song, kind of acting as a wife of the cowboy. What Michael Poulsen said about this is it's about a cowboy who gets drafted into war. When he returns, he's actually not aware that he's dead, so he's actually strolling around as a spirit on his horse and can't find his wife. What he doesn't know is that she also passed while he was in the war, and he had no idea that he's dead, and she left him. So he's strolling around and can't really figure out where she is. He's strolling around. And the wife is asking the Reaper to lead him to the other side so that they can meet again. Uh, Very sentimental. The Sinner is You follows that. What Poulsen said about this is that sometimes we don't understand why people die around us. It doesn't make sense. I'm singing about a spiritual world where there is some kind of reaper who punishes people for not treating themselves and the people around them well by taking a random soul. We're left here not knowing why that person has died. The reaper is saying, "I'll take a random soul and you were the sinner," without knowing. Uh, Pretty emotional song. I also think it's one that they probably could have done without on this album. I think that going from Lonesome Rider to Doc Holliday would have flowed a little better. Maybe, Volbeat doesn't really do bonus tracks. They did on the next album, but they don't really do bonus tracks too much. But I feel like this might have been a little bit better as a bonus track, or at least just not in between Lonesome Rider and Doc Holliday. So let's talk about Doc Holliday. Now, this is quite a story, and I'm going to try to tell this the best that I can, but it's a long story, and I'm going to skip a lot of parts of it. But there are some great documentaries on Netflix and other streaming platforms about the story of Wyatt Earp. And I recommend watching any of them if you're really interested in all this country western stuff. This is kind of the crux of the album right here. So why is Doc Holliday famous? Well, Doc Holliday is the sidekick to Wyatt Earp, who is the more famous outlaw. And I say outlaw in quotations because he wasn't really an outlaw. He was the deputy sheriff for the town of Tombstone, Arizona. He was friendly with the sheriff, the real sheriff. Sometimes he crossed the boundaries and he kind of acted, as the real sheriff when he shouldn't have. He sort of pushed the lines a little bit. He was at odds with the Cowboys, who always gave him trouble, tried to get him and Robert Paul, who was a sheriff, out of their jobs by rigging an election, but they mostly stayed out of each other's ways. Things kind of started to change when he was ousted from his position and Johnny Behan was appointed because Behan promised Earp an undersheriff position that he didn't follow up on, which was kind of based off of another situation, not one that I'm going to mention. Tensions rise after a stagecoach robbery involving the Cowboys, and Ike Clanton, their leader, gives up the names of the three robbers who are killed in another robbery, so Earp doesn't even get to them. Regardless, the Cowboys had previously killed their own if they had, somebody had ratted them out. They would kill that person who was the rat. This wouldn't have mattered if Doc Holliday hadn't drunkenly made references to the fact that Ike ratted out the three robbers directly to him, which made Ike paranoid that he was going to tell some of the other Cowboys and have him killed. So Ike sets out to kill Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday. Then there's a little bit of tension, kind of builds up, and then you have the famous shootout at the OK Corral, which lasted about 30 seconds. Both of Wyatt's brothers, Virgil and Morgan, get shot in the fight, as well as three of the Cowboys, including Ike's brother Billy. Ike files murder charges as he portrays the Earps and Doc Holliday as murderers, while the Cowboys stood with their hands up. And then he gets the town on his side by dressing up the three dead Cowboys in their Sunday best, all in like tuxedos, and putting them out for the town to see, which gave the town the general opinion of, look what the Earps did. They're murderers. They're the real murderers here. And so they kind of make this sort of portrayal for themselves as sort of the innocent guys, and they're being hunted by the Earps and Doc Holliday. And this is, part of Earp's revenge, being ousted by the law and then trying to get back at Ike Clanton for, some of the stuff in the past. So to make matters worse, Wyatt gets caught sleeping with Sheriff Behan's wife, who was Sheriff Behan's wife was dissatisfied with Behan because he basically treated her like crap and regularly visited brothels. Aside from that, he had a kind of very good reputation with the town, so his testimony would have been pretty magnificent for the Earps, but Behan catches them in the act and has a chance to shoot Wyatt, but he doesn't. So instead, he arrests him, basically. So at their trial, he testifies against the Earps and Holiday. The trial gathers a lot of national media attention because it seems like a real-life version of the Wild West movies being portrayed in the movies at the time. All the evidence points against them until a guy by the name of H.F. Sills, who was an eyewitness that was terminally ill and therefore not worried about retribution from the Cowboys, testifies that the defense's argument, the Earps, Holiday, and Tom Fitch, their lawyer, is accurate, so the judge exonerates them. That's kind of their only reason for being exonerated, because otherwise it would have been moved to trial, they would have had to stand before a jury, and the jury would have convicted them because they weren't very popular in the town at the time. The town kind of took the opinion of the Cowboys that the Earps were murderers. After they're acquitted, the Cowboys then try to go after the Earps and Holiday. They shoot Virgil Earp, critically wounding him, but they get away with it, even though Ike Clanton's hat is found at the scene. So they get away with an actual crime. The Earps get away with kind of defending themselves. Doesn't really balance out. But then they kill Morgan Earp at a billiards table through a window. So Wyatt forms this group, this posse that accompanies him through a vendetta, very famous vendetta against the Cowboys. The posse included Doc Holliday. They wind up killing several high-ranking Cowboys in the process, including Curly Bill, who ironically Wyatt had stood up for in court 18 months prior. Ike Clanton ultimately leaves Tombstone, so they don't wind up killing him. There are reports of him in other towns, but ultimately he kind of gets away with it. He's just sort of chased out of town. And um, it seems like all the Cowboys are kind of chased out of town after that. Any of those that weren't killed that remain. So through all of this, surprisingly to anybody, the U.S. government is actually on Wyatt's side through all of this, even when he's put up as a criminal on trial, because the stagecoach robbers, like the Cowboys, were threatening a major business transaction that was going on between Wells Fargo and Company and a British banking group. So Wells Fargo actually apparently financed Wyatt Earp's vendetta against the Cowboys, paid assassin. Um, Unfortunately, our hero of the song, Doc Holliday, the sidekick, famous sidekick, dies of tuberculosis at the age of 36 before all of the stuff with Wyatt Earp, which he actually saved Wyatt Earp's life, hence why he's by his side. Basically, the two of them sort of are bonded by brotherhood after that. They didn't even like each other to begin with, but then they became brothers after that incident. Before all of this, Holiday was a dentist. His tuberculosis kind of took him away from it because it's not good to be coughing blood into your patient's mouth. So yeah, that is Doc Holliday's life. Um, it's also, this is one of Volbeat's heaviest songs. It's certainly the heaviest on the album. Also, probably one of their top five most liked songs of all time, at least by the diehard fan base. So yeah, that is Doc Holliday. Our Loved Ones is the final song off this album. It is the perfect country western meets heavy metal song to end with, and it is complete with a harmonica. It's a sort of very emotional song about losing loved ones and the support it takes to heal. Life can be both glorious and cruel, and this is basically saying, I'll take both, and in doing so, will find the meaning of life in myself. So yeah, that is a great song to end on, and very country western. Um, I think going back to Doc Holliday, again, you should really watch some documentaries about this. This is a sort of fascinating subject. But again, probably that is the one exception to the concept album part because they aren't really outlaws. They kind of are, but not really. Doc Holliday and Wyatt Earp. Um, but regardless, this is a concept album that is entirely based on country western music and country western themes, based kind of in the southwestern part of the United States for the most part. Um, this is without a doubt my second favorite album of theirs. I like Servant to the Mind more. That was also the first Volbeat album that I listened from start to finish. Before they toured with Ghost, that's kind of how I got into them. I had heard like Lola Montez before, but didn't start getting seriously into the music until Servant to the Mind was released. Love that album. Love how heavy it is. I also really like the most recent album, God of Angels Trust. But after Outlaw Gentlemen and Shady Ladies, like I mentioned, they kind of turn more towards hard rock as a result of the hard rock songs that did well on Outlaw Gentlemen and Shady Ladies. Um, so yeah, that's pretty much it. That is Outlaw Gentlemen and Shady Ladies. Absolutely love that album. And a great summer album too. So let's talk about soon in a pit near you. Volbeat, the band whose uh, 12-year-old album I just reviewed. They are in Camden on Friday. I am probably going to vlog that and put that on this channel. A month from now, approximately, a little over a month, is the start of the Dream Theater Tour in Reading, Pennsylvania for the second straight tour, the U.S. or second straight Dream Theater US tour. They are starting in Pennsylvania. I will be at that inaugural concert of the tour, so that'll be fantastic. Can't wait to see the set list. Can't wait to hear them play some songs live, hopefully, for the first time in a long time. And then, so I uploaded a podcast episode. All right, I recorded an episode. the most recent one, episode 5. And I recorded it a week in advance because I had to, because I was going on vacation the following weekend and didn't have time after that to record an episode and knew that I wouldn't have time. And I said in that episode that maybe Spiritbox announces a North American tour at some point or some other tour, but they haven't announced anything yet. And then over the course of the week between recording it and uploading it, Spiritbox announced a North American tour. Unfortunately, it's not going to be anywhere near me, so there's not going to be a vlog, or I'm not even going to attend that concert because it's nowhere that I can actually get to. But it's going to kick off in November. So Spiritbox touring North America again in November. So anyways, that is what is all on the docket. Thank you guys very much for watching. Until next time, peace out, broskies.